Frank. What's the weirdest thing you've ever saw in here?
Let me ask you a question, kid. Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
Hey, we gonna party tonight or what?
Yeah, we are gonna party.
Well, where are we gonna party?
I don't know, somewhere.
Okay, we could go to the park.
Oh, no, we can't. The cops said they'd shoot us if we go back to the park. Yeah, and I ain't in no mood to die tonight.
I like death.
Greetings, fools, and welcome to Minute 30 of Do You Want to Party, the Movies by Minute podcast for the groundbreaking 1985 horror classic, The Return of the Living Dead. I'm your host, Troy, and joining me today is a fellow Movie by Minutes enthusiast,
Luke Allen.
Hey, Luke Allen. Thank you very much for joining me. Just to have the audience know that when I first started this project, I reached out to the Movies by Makers Minute group in on Facebook and all that sort of thing. And a couple of people are like, hey, yeah, sure, I'd like to join in all that. And Luke here was one of the people. And in the new year, I decided I'm going to approach all those people right at the get-go, see who's available to go. And thankfully, Mr. Allen, who is 5 hours into the future for me, because I've my first international guest host here. He's all the way over in England. As it is,
because I can just talk rubbish, and then if it doesn't make sense, just be like, oh, it's a British thing.
There you go. That's exactly. You could always do that. All right. So like I always ask all my first time guest hosts and all that, what is your connection to, like, when did you first experience The Return of the Living Dead?
So I am one of those annoying people who have not actually seen the film, but by being someone who works in film and very closely to the film, I feel like it's one of those films that I've absorbed through pop culture a lot. I think when you actually put the call out, I've mentioned the show, I was actually working on a zombie film.
That is correct. That is another thing. Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. So I spent last summer on a film called Bjorn of the Dead, which was a comedy horror zombie movie about a zombie apocalypse set at an ABBA tribute concert. And written by Austin Dickinson, son of Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden.
Whoa, that sounds amazing.
It's weird, it's fun, lots of silly cameos. I joined as an extra as one of the zombies, and by the end of the shoot I managed to become part of the crew. So it's
nice.
But yeah, I was working on that. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun zombieing, a very sort of new experience. I get killed in the film by Bruce Dickinson. Is that a spoiler? I don't know.
Oh, who cares? You friggin' first of all, you get to work with Bruce Dickinson, but to get killed by Bruce Dickinson, that's fantastic.
It was weird actually, because I wasn't in on the same day as Bruce, so I think it was like a pickup.
Okay.
I got very chatty with his son Austin, who is the writer, and who was very hands-on with everything, which was so lovely, because sometimes writers, especially writers who, are essentially nepo babies. Like he is lovely and was so brilliant with everyone, and yeah, we were kind of I think it was a pickup shot to get this reverse, and it was I was very straight on this. It was a very weird experience, because it was like we had to all sort of shoot ourselves attacking him, and they had like a CGI sword, so it was just a green screen handle.
Obviously, yeah.
And then we sort of fall and did a few takes of that. And then they sent me over to a green screen studio, and I had to fall again from like loads of different angles.
Right.
I don't know how it's going to turn out, but it was fun. It's very new, but yeah, very, very silly film. And it's just, I like camp, silly fun.
Nice, excellent.
And that's what it was.
Well, that's what this movie is.
Yeah, I was in a real zombie mood when I saw this call out and went, oh, I can relate to being a zombie.
Excellent. All right, so let's just get into the minute itself. So 30 minutes starts with flexing muscles and ends with putting it right over here. So Ernie continues his working on the rigor mortis by bending the corpse's arm, signaled by an audible snapping sound.
By flexing the muscle.
Oh boy.
as he does it twice to the one arm before reaching over the slowly becoming drained body to bend the opposite arm again with the slight cracking sound.
You'll not find that in the book, my friend. The embalming business is basically passed on by word of mouth.
Bert seems to be a mix between inquiry and repulsion of the maneuvering that his buddy is doing. And sounding quite interested in the situation, Bert states as much.
I'll tell you, that's fascinating, Ernie. That's pretty something.
Ernie continues on the situation of the corpse by a slight nervous chuckle from Bert. Remarking about his exhaustion, Ernie pulls a blue sheet over the bodies that is splayed out on the table before him. As we cover up the body on the slab, I'd like to say that while for featured zombies in all the acting credits, like Yellow Man, Tar Man, Headless Tar Man, the Legless Corpse, and the Half Lady Corpse, I feel that the body, or at least the actor, should get recognition. This is clearly an actual human laying there on the actual slab. No offense to the special effects crew, but the head and limbs are just a little too beyond what was capable of 1983 special effects makeup. The skin is way too flexible, way too like realistic feeling and all that. When one examines the this past few minutes, like I have been in a minute, as you do, you watch the scene over and over and over again. You can witness that the cadaver has made out the prosthetic overlay of the chest area. The section just at the shoulders is a perfectly blended area, obviously. The giant yellow and purple bruise, and quite clearly the area where Ernie has inserted the long silver tow car, the tool used to drain the liquids from the body during the aspiration procedure. The movement of Ernie bending arms and now the flesh joints respond like actual flesh rather than Ernie bending his arm and how the flesh and joints respond like actual flesh.
Well, he's dead now.
So as we go back to the film, Ernie huffs at a job well done.
And I ambushed.
And Bert takes a slight pause to change the subject matter.
Hey, buddy boy, how long have we been friends, Ernie? About how long?
As he slowly makes his way around the length of the table, he reflects on the length of their relationship.
25 years, give or take.
We can now see as Klugager rounds the far end of the table, another wall of the embalming room, which has more of the yellow tile, as well as a black double door with silver push plates. And the area that should have windows to see what's on the other side are painted black. While slipping off the yellow gloves off of his fingers, Ernie gulps down some more coffee from the silver camping equipment style vessel. So Bert approaches the question of secrecy.
Yeah. If I ask you a favor, could you keep it quiet?
As Ernie responds, we now can see a third wall of the room. Again, the yellow tiles line the wall, and we see metal chrome shelving with shelves filled with items like metal bowls, bottles of every shape and color, cardboard boxes, plastic trays, and even a can of shaving cream. While not fully shown, like the Lysol can from earlier in the Unita warehouse, the familiar design of the red and white barber pole design is unmistakably a Barbasol brand, making it, I believe, the fourth sort of product placement, including, like I said, the previously mentioned Lysol can, the giant Coke machine, the Igloo cooler box in the basement, and now this container of Barbasol, just trying to bring the world of the Return of the Living Dead into a realistic area. Right next to the shelving is a white painted medical cabinet. The doors on the upper area are framed glass which allows us to see what's inside. Below is a small shelf area, which is over a stacked bank of 3 drawers, which are then also beside a hinged door. All 4 are adorned with chrome knobs. The full gore of Ernie's apron is now clearly in view. It looks like to be in quite a busy day. Ernie responds positively right away to Bert's secrecy question.
Sure. What is it?
Bert relates the severity of his situation.
Well, I'm going to need some help, Ernie, in a pretty big way, really.
Ernie starts acting concerned for his friend's confirmation, and he's reliable and asks one question that is about to change his life completely.
You can depend on me. What's wrong?
Bert pauses for a second and points towards the big black door and mentions his associates outside.
I got a couple of my men out here. You mind if I...
No. As Bert advances to the door, Ernie loudly protests.
Bert, no, Bert, that's illegal.
But Bert opens the door anyways, which conveniently blocks the camera view from the outside. Ernie instantly gives up on his protest with the mention of the legality of this thing and of what Bert is doing. Stepping back into the room, Bert now leads Freddy into the room and signals where to go.
Fred, you can put it right over here. Right here.
And that's where we end this particular minute. Now, the reason why I pointed out the inclusion of the 2 separate walls is because from previous minutes, we have learned that these sets are all built. Every single interior scene you see is a built set within a giant warehouse that they took over. So we're looking at like what you would consider like a TV set. You've got 3 walls and that's it. So it's kind of neat to see how well dressed the non-main walls are, and it's just a really nice, because it makes it feel like more of a lived-in environment, especially knowing the fact that outside that door is just a little black sheeted area to signal the outside where you don't actually see. So yeah, it's just,
I think production design is always like one of those super like underappreciated roles.
Mm-hmm.
You only really know production design in my mind. It's up there with sound in terms of you only really notice if it's bad.
Yes.
And and like you say with dressing a warehouse, there, like I've been on some shoots and stuff where like the director is really paranoid. Like, say, what was one we did? It was like a restaurant, and it had to look, and it looked like a living room, and sort of lounge space, and it was fantastic. But I remember the director kept being like, is it good enough? Are people going to notice? And I'm like, no one is ever going to watch your TV show and think, is this lounge really a restaurant? like that's not a thing that audiences are looking for. But yeah, that level of realism is so fantastic. And I've been, lucky enough that there have been some stuff that I've like written or produced that even like months later, I had it yesterday actually. I released like a unit still from something I shot a couple of months ago, and it wasn't until I like looked at this picture that I released that I was like, oh, production design added all these things that I just never noticed, but are so kind of gorgeous. And yeah, it's always kind of surreal to know that someone spent several days at an office like coming up with it, because I just don't know where you'd begin. So fascinating. But yeah, well, there was another point I was going to make and I just completely left my head. But yeah, no, one of my main notes was how just brilliantly like decorated everything is. It does feel, it feels so lived in, which is always a big thing, which is the one time I've noticed, like, poor production design is sometimes especially if you watch like student films or low budget TV, you might have a scene in, I don't know, like a teenager's bedroom where there's all these posters on the wall and you're like, I can tell those posters were put up today.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that level of making stuff feel lived in, I think is so kind of, I don't know entirely what they do, but when they do it right, it's good.
Yeah. Well, also the nice thing about like the design is using like what I'm about to talk about. The commentary track is both Dan O'Bannon and William Stout, and William Stout is the production designer. So we get to hear a lot of, as the scenes are playing out, he describes like what's going on, and how he says in the previous minute, the yellow wall behind him, the tiled yellow wall, is just masonite that has been painted yellow and sliced with a blade to give it a tiled look. And it's just, wow. And again, this movie is 1983, 1984 with a $4 million budget. So it's a very low budget for the amount of production that we get from this film. It's just astounding, the finished project, knowing that we're going in with the handicap of such a small budget for.
That does remind me, you were saying about the tiles, when we were doing Beyond of the Dead, one of the main things when I ended up helping out was they first kind of put me in the art department, which was fascinating to me because that's just, as I kind of suggested, not ever how my brain works. I'm also dyslexic, and my coordination's dreadful, and they welcomed me with open arms, which was lovely because I must have been crap. But it was, but I remember there was this whole like bit where it's supposed to look like quite a posh office with, like window panes with metal bars on them and stuff.
Right.
And like we had, I think it was like a plastic window, and I was spray painting wood to look like metal, and it's just all those tiny details that I think are just, fascinating, but go such a huge way. And that does remind me, I also got tasked with what I think is one of the funniest jobs on a zombie movie, which was often they finished a scene, there's just been, a big massacre, limbs everywhere, blood on the floor. They move on to the next scene, and I'm the guy who has to mop up.
Your mop up crew, nice.
Yeah, restore it back to normal so they can go and do an earlier scene the next day.
Nice.
And it's fascinating, how quickly desensitized you get on a zombie to stuff. Like, I remember someone being like, "Oh, Luke, can you go get me the trolley full of severed limbs?" And it was just like, yeah, of course. But every now and again, you are desensitized, but your brain kind of, these sort of clear kind of natural instincts come in. That I remember, like, I picked up this like severed leg prop, and for some reason the texture and weight of it was a lot more realistic than everything else. And like I picked it up, and like you instantly like drop it because your body just goes, "Don't touch that." But it was, it's fascinating, and was just a real sort of insight that now, anytime I watch horrors or especially like zombie stuff, I'm always thinking about the bloke with the trolley full of severed limbs. I'm like, there's got to be, there with that. Whereas normally I think in admin, that's my film world. So I'll watch a film and think about the risk assessments. But now I think about the bloke with the severed limb trolley.
Nice. All right, so over on the commentary track, which is with director and writer Dan O'Bannon and production designer William Stout. William Stout mentions that it was Dan's idea to put the huge bruise on the corpse, which marked where the blood started to pool. Dan O'Bannon mentions how he felt looking at the guy that he seemed so smooth and it wasn't gross enough. He then continues to sort of recall that he himself went up with some makeup paints and how he used the yellow and blue colors. Furthermore, he continues to say that the movie like this isn't going to be satisfactory to the audience if it isn't gross enough, and in good taste, that is. Changing the conversation to William Stout talks about how when Don Calfa first showed up for the first day after he was hired, he was sporting a mustache that it looks like he had been cultivating for a few years, and how inevitably he picked up on the stress on your face, meaning Dan O'Bannon's face. And when Don asked Dan what was wrong, that he, Dan, again, hadn't envisioned the character of Ernie having a mustache. Without hesitation, Don said it was off. So that's where the particular minute lines up with the commentary track and all that sort of thing. So it's nice to see more behind the scenes stuff with great actors like Don Kafla and Clu Gallagher and James Karen. It's just fascinating to hear Dan and William talk about stories of how these classic characters came in and so melded easily, and how they also end up like praising like the younger actors when they talk, like when Tom Matthews and James Karen work together, how they all are always complimenting how they work. The two newly united actors work so well together and all that sort of thing. So we are going to go to, I got to go to another bit of media here. We're going to go to, according to the script, which is a story and screenplay by Dan O'Bannon. This is the revision from October 1983 that we're looking through. And it's based on the story and screenplay by John Russo, Rudy Rickey, and Russell Steiner. So to begin with, we have just obviously the descriptor of where we are, which is the interior, mortuary, examining room, night. So we start off with Ernie. He pinches the corpse. It wears off after a while, but you can break it out manually if you flex the muscles. He continues breaking out the rigor mortis from the corpse while sipping his coffee. Bert clears his throat. Ernie, how long have we been friends? Ernie, adding it up. 25 years, give or take. Bert, if I asked you to keep a very important secret, could you? Ernie, sure, what is it? Bert, Ernie, I need your help in a big way. Ernie, you can depend on me. What's wrong? Bert, I got a couple of my men outside. Mind if I'm bringing them in? Ernie, what is this about? Bert, Frank, bring it in. Frank and Freddie come in carrying a stretcher with a tarp over it. And that's where I'm going to end that, because technically we don't have any more information from the minute and all that sort of thing. And it's still the back of my brain. Every single time I read the script with just between Ernie and Bert, all I hear is Ernie and Bert, and I have to stop myself from doing impressions of the Muppet characters.
I was going to say, it's like the whole time you've been talking about Bert and Ernie, it's kind of...
I the first time I started doing this, I almost went into a "Hey Bert" sort of thing and all that, and because I can sort of do I could do a couple of Jim Henson and I could do a couple of Frank Oz characters, and Bert and Ernie on the outside of what I can do, but I always have to stop myself from breaking out into "Hey Ernie" sort of thing and all that. It's just it's. All right, so we go to the work print comparison. Now, this is obviously the culminated dailies that are put together to get the full thing of what they shot and put together, and then they edit down from there once they actually get. This particular minute that we are dealing with, which is minute 29 to 30, in the comparison to the work print, actually goes from minute 34:05 to 35:08. So we have a little bit of a stretched little extra thing. To begin with, the simple act of Ernie covering the body with the blue sheet is a tad longer. So just past the edit point in the final version of the work print has Ernie asking Bert to assist him as the sheet catches around the feet of the corpse. And that's the rest of the work print works out as perfectly matched up as it is, because it's the exact same final edit. And it's a fascinating thing to be a lifelong fan of this movie to now, because I'm just watching the work print in comparison to minute. So I am experiencing brand new scenes that I've never seen, like little interactions between characters or just stuff that was completely left out. And it's all fascinatingly new footage to me, which is kind of neat.
That is interesting. That's the thing I always loved in general about like the minute by minute exploration, is you become so fixated on like really specific elements of the film that like anything new feels so much more exciting.
Yeah.
Which is just lovely.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that's about it covering that particular minute. Let's talk about you there, Mr. Luke Allen. Why don't you give us a little background more about your your movie work and all that sort of thing, as well as if you want to talk about any of the podcasts that you've already done. I've actually started listening to one of your ones, which I believe I have the name written down, but I can't remember what it's called. It's the About Time one. What was
Oh
that
yeah,
called?
2 minutes about time.
2 minutes about time. That's it. Yes. Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for listening to that. What's been really bizarre is I did that show like nearly 5 years ago, and like today you mentioned that you were listening, and someone else on like a random meeting I was on was like, "Oh, I've
Really?
started listening to your podcast," and I was like, "This is 5 years ago." I've never met this person before, but that was like the first thing she said on this production meeting was, "Oh, I listened to your podcast," and it's like, "Oh, that's nice." It's nice that they're kind of. I think that's the lovely thing with Movie by Minutes is this very sort of slow, like core audience that will
Mhm.
always find it. And About Time is one of those films that every now and again has that little peak in people. Like it aired on British TV last night, and so I think
Okay.
people are kind of talking about
Right.
Time a little
Right.
bit more. I tend to get tagged whenever About Time's like in the news. Someone sends. I get emails from like strangers being like About Time's in the news, and I love that there's this weird correlation between About Time's on something. I must tell Luke, and I like
Nice.
that has happened. But yeah, I'm a big Richard Curtis obsessive.
Yes.
I love all of his films and his TV work with stuff like Blackadder and Mr. Bean and whatnot.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah. And the nice thing is the fruits of doing an About Time show happened this year because I ended up getting invited by Richard Curtis to a preview screening of his new film like 2 months
Oh.
before it came out. It's out now. It was on Netflix. It was called That Christmas. It was like a family Christmas film. It was
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah. I think I mean, searching through this time of the year, you
Yeah.
can't avoid all the Christmas stuff that's dropped onto.
But yeah, I got
Yeah.
to see it in October, which was really
Nice.
lovely. I emailed because I had this sort of contact due to doing the show with Richard Curtis's partner, who kind of she's his associate producer, script editor on everything he does. I just emailed her like when I saw on the news that they were having a premiere that day, and I was like, "Oh, good news! Best of luck with the premiere." And she just said to me, "If you can get to London tomorrow, I can get you a ticket to a press screening." And it was like, "Oh, okay." So when I had lovely chat with Richard Curtis, and it was just this really sort of surreal experience as a Richard Curtis fanboy. um,
Oh,
but
I'm
uh,
sure. Yeah.
but yeah, outside of that, I write and produce mostly slash do whatever anyone wants to hire and pay me to do, because it's a tough time. And so yeah, I do a sketch show which is currently at the pilot stage, called Something Sketchy.
Hmm.
Um, there's what else is there? Another pilot, Henry House, that I production managed, which is like a comedy drama that's currently being pitched out to networks. That's one of my favorite scripts I've ever been sent. It's wonderful. And as of today, at time of recording, about 8 hours ago, the press releases went out about a Christmas feature film that's just entered development that I'm producing called
Oh,
Films for Christmas. It's the second feature film from a director called Keith Kopp and a writer called Lawrence Guy. They made a feature film called Translations a couple of years ago that did pretty well, and this is their second collaboration. And I was very privileged to get an email from Keith being like, "Do you want to come and produce this?" And so
nice.
yeah, I'm doing that. And other than that, I don't know what else have I did a casting job recently. Apparently, that's a thing that I do now. I did casting. I was casting assistant on a new film with Vinnie Jones called Reckless.
Okay.
That I don't know when this episode comes out, but the film won't come out for about a year. But excited to see that because that was a new experience. But that's been lovely because all these press releases come out announcing the cast, and I'm like, oh, I did that. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, basically, I if anyone makes films in Britain and wants someone to do an odd job, then phone me.
All right.
Is my general thing.
Do you want to put out your credentials? Like, where can people track you down and all that sort of thing?
Oh yeah. It's so main thing will probably be through my website, for which is through my production company, which is called Ask Seek Knock. So just askseekknock.co.uk. Everything of me is probably on there. Um, and yeah, it's a fun time, and I'm gonna try and get some of the MXM shows to be listed on there as well because I have yeah, I've sort of I've missed the Movies by Minutes world because I really really like it.
Right.
But it is also like it does change your mindset when being on a film set. It's like, oh, every minute matters because 10 years from now someone might
Someone will
do
be, yeah,
a minute
someone
by
will be
minute
sitting down and
section.
spend months doing, yeah, exactly, exactly. Wow, I think you actually, until you said that, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, of course, if you're, because of the popularity of the guys that, what, 12 years ago started the Star Wars minutes.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
you never know. I mean, it was Niall from Batman. It joked when he saw that he commented on the press release they went out today for the film First Christmas, and he was like, "So who's starting the First Christmas minute?" And I was like, "I love that it's a joke, but it's also like, yeah, because
Yeah,
it's
it
a
could
totally
be.
different way of viewing films.
Yeah.
It's important, and so yeah, every minute matters." I remember Richard Curtis joking when we had him on the show. He was like, "Which minutes are bad? I'll cut them in the director's cut." It's like that's. Um, so yeah, it's always worth just bearing in mind that people might go in this insane detail. And as found with Richard Curtis, you do. I think if you do a minute by minute analysis, there's a chance you end up knowing the film better than the filmmakers do. That's kind of
Oh,
the
for
thing that
sure. Yeah.
Curtis
Oh,
keeps
yeah.
joking about. Is like he made About Time over 10 years ago. He's moved on with his life.
Mm-hmm.
You really think about it. Um, One of my prized possessions after going to the screening with him is like I brought my About Time DVD, and he signed it to the world's greatest expert on this film from expert number two.
Nice.
Like,
See,
yeah.
okay, that's fantastic to have that attitude towards it too. That is
Mm.
so fantastic.
No, yeah, he was a real like good sport, and I'm pretty sure he listened to some of the show as well, which was it was a weird experience while doing it, knowing that he's listening,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like, can we say the bad stuff? But I think the mere fact you love a film so much as to do the show
Yeah.
kind of outweighs any slight niggle. Um, but yeah, if people haven't seen About Time, they should watch About Time.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
really
It's not only is it first of all a beautifully done movie. It's so well acted. The cast is fantastic. The script is phenomenal for what it is.
Yes.
And it's, I think, like even you mentioned in the beginning of the first episodes, how it's like a sci-fi story that's not a sci-fi story. Like,
yeah, I think it's described as like an anti-time travel.
Yeah, exactly. It's that's it, an
Yeah.
time travel movie. So again, the reason I saw it, first of all, I mean, I like the cast and all that sort of thing, but I also enjoy a well-crafted time travel storytelling story, and this is a fantastic movie and all that sort of thing. That after watching, I'm like, ooh, this is so good. And then obviously the cast is a fantastic cast and whatnot, and how they interact with each other. But how the sci-fi elements of the time travel really isn't sort of time travel-y sort of thing. There's no machine. There's no.
Yeah, so often time travel films, and understandably, a lot of films like need that for the style of thing it is, are so focused into why the time travel and how it all works. Whereas Richard Curtis's approach is very much, okay, these are the rules, let's just tell a story with it. And actually, if you want to think about it for more than 5 minutes, a lot of the rules fall apart. But like, why would you do that? Because it's a film.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about the love, it's about the relationships. And so, I genuinely think like it's just solid enough that like time travel films are always going to have problems. But when some of the criticisms about time were like the time travel doesn't make sense, it's like, well, if the fact you're thinking about it means you've just lost, like,
exactly. Yeah, if you're sitting there in the theater trying to analyze the time travel, yeah, you've done something wrong. Yeah.
And he had a similar approach when he did yesterday, the Beatles film, where it was like, okay, we're in a world where the Beatles never existed. He doesn't spend ages going, how did he get in this parallel world? Why don't they exist? It's just like, here's an idea, let's tell a story. And I've always loved that. I always describe it as a few films like this. I always describe it as high concept, low stakes. It's like it's that same world of Rob, who I did 2 minutes about time with, obsessed with Groundhog Day. I think Groundhog Day fits in that same box, as does Freaky Friday to some degree. Obviously, they still explain how it happened, but it's that same thing of like, here's this big sci-fi concept, but the stakes are what, like a job interview and a school concert. Like, it's taking
Yeah.
the big concept but giving
Yeah.
it a low stake. And yeah, that's the kind of storytelling I love. A man can travel in time, but he wants to fall in love. Like, yeah.
So that's gonna wrap it up for this particular minute of the podcast. Luke, I'd like to once again thank you very much for joining me here for this particular minute. It was fascinating to get to talk to you and all that sort of thing. And I hope that I can maybe sometime in the near future call you in for another minute or two, maybe after you've seen the movie or something like that. Or
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely need to get around to watching it, and thank you for letting me ramble on about
not a problem.
Things. But no, it's been good fun to be back in them. I feel just annoyed that it's been like a year since I've MXM'd. I feel like I need to clear the diary and do like a
right.
guest spots, you know.
Now you had mentioned that your 2 minutes about time was like 5 years ago, and as I'm reflecting on, I'm like, yeah, I think my first movies by minute was about four some odd years ago when I did a solo project. Well, I did it by myself for the most part. I had a couple people hop in near the end once I got into the rhythm for it was called Welcome to the Slaughtered Lamb, which was a movies by minute for An American Werewolf in London.
Oh yeah.
So, which me personally is my favorite horror film of all time, and well, my second favorite movie of all time, and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm like, wait, yeah, I think my first time doing one of these was about 4 years ago, and
Yeah, I mean, saying the words of like, oh, 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, that can't be true. But no,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly,
it
yeah,
was. It was. Yeah, it was. I mean, I started like, I think Rob and I started recording, like just as the pandemic hit.
mm,
So that was March, April 2020.
right,
Because yeah, Rob worked in education and I was in school, and then there was no school. And it was like, what am I going to do with my life?
yeah.
Um, and it was a beneficial choice because it meant I got to meet Richard Curtis 4 years later.
Yeah,
So
no, I mean, that's a fantastic result. Yeah. Hell, I'd be happy with just friggin' either meeting David Naughton or John Landis would be kind of cool. I'm like, hey, you're that guy, right?
that's it. It's like I did realize though, I was sort of joked with Richard. I was like, oh, if you ever got any jobs going? And I was thinking, I am definitely just the crazed fan who knows
Yeah,
everything.
exactly. Yeah, I'm the
Like
obsessed
that.
guy that you
The
avoid.
one thing
Yeah.
is that dynamic will. I probably won't ever get a job for Richard Curtis because that dynamic probably isn't healthy on set. But
No, no.
I just hope I hope it remains endearing. I had two really lovely chats with him at the screening, and as I left, he was still talking to some other people, and I thought, should I go? I was like, no, talk to him. Going up to him three times is
Yeah,
when
that's it. Yeah.
I was like two, and then leaving before he leaves is that right level of appropriate
Yeah.
interaction, not turning. Because it's very from a neurodiverse perspective. When your autistic special interest is basically a person who is suddenly standing in front of you, it's like this isn't supposed to happen. How do I like control this?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of it from that perspective. Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, it's weird, but hopefully to Richard it was an endearing, charming fan. I mean, yeah, he was lovely because he could have just fobbed me off, signed something, and moved on, but like right away he wanted to. He was just his first thing was like asking what I've been up to and wanted to like have me pitch projects to him. And he did. I did mention about the film actually, which we just announced, and I was like, "Hey, so you've just done a Christmas film?" I was like, I'm about to go into one," and he was like, "Oh, take it to Netflix. That's what I did." And I am thinking, it won't work, but I could just from that jokey comment email someone at Netflix and say Richard Curtis advised I come to you. So
that's true too. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
If it works, it works. If it doesn't, what do you get? You get an interesting no thanks, but no thanks sort of.
Well, that's
message,
it.
right?
It's one of those things where you expect it not to become anything, but if it does, it's a fun story to tell on
True.
like Jimmy
That is
Fallon
true.
years
Yeah.
from now.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, who knows? But yeah, he was lovely. He was like recommending songs to me, and yeah, so it was.
Wow.
He's a nice
Yeah,
guy. You
nice,
ever get to
nice.
meet Richard Curtis?
Yeah.
Have a chat with him. Um, yeah, I'm sorry, I've rambled on your
Oh no, that's quite all right. That's
all
quite all
the
right.
stuff.
Hey, you don't get to do this the second time you come back. We're just talking about the movie the next time you come back.
Yeah. It's just, but I think people just be like, "Oh, that guy's back." The one who just kept going on about how he met Richard Curtis and got killed.
All right. So, like I said, thank you, Luke, for joining me. I want to thank the audience, the listeners in, and all that sort of thing. Again, if anyone has anything that they want to talk to the podcast about, previous minutes, future minutes, you could reach out, leave a comment in the particular episode you're listening to, or catch us on any of the social medias and whatnot. We actually have from I just had an interaction like literally yesterday with this gentleman who got to us on our Tumblr, which is something I just recently started because
Oh, wow, nice.
Tumblr is still a thing apparently.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't know that we were still
I
in
know I
2009.
remember eons ago, like, oh, let's see all these postings and all that sort of thing. And I just like, let's see if Tumblr's still a thing. I'm like, oh, okay, there's a big community. Oh, there's a big community for Return of the Living Dead. Let's poke around and all here. And so this gentleman, John, who's from Half Price Horror, which is another podcast. So podcasters talking to podcasters, points out that I had called Freddy a jock, which if just as a speculation on my part of the character of because these these characters are supposed to be punk characters, and half them look like preppy characters from the mid 80s and all that sort of thing. Some hardcore looking punk, some not so much, and then some preppies. So I had speculated with one of my other guest hosts what this situation was and all that, and how Freddie looks like more like a jock, and Tina is more of like the preppy, like high school queen and all that sort of thing. John had basically pointed out, reaching out with the information about how the characters ended up coming together. So apparently in the John Russo novelization of The Return of the Living Dead, Freddy is a punk who's trying to clean up his act and hold down a job. He used to be heavily involved in the drug scene, along with the character of Suicide. But when his cousin OD'd, it shocked him into changing his ways. So the major reason why he has such a big reaction to the cadaver, it reminds him of his cousin. He met Tina after cleaning up, and that's why she, Casey, and Chuck seem so out of place of the group that hang out together, with Freddie as the link between them, which is why Tina looks so uncomfortable so often. She's not used to them, which is why some of them are so standoffish about Freddie getting a job, and why Tina tells Suicide that Freddie's not into the stuff that he sells anymore. So it's kind of neat to have another perspective, which means now I got to track down the novelization of this book and read it along with the rest of the movie to figure out any sort of extra things like that come up. But again, anyone has any more information that I'm either overlooked or might need in the future, please reach out, and it just helps grow the strength of the podcast, which is always the best way to go. You become more aware of everything by the time you're done than when you started, which is what should happen in a good Movies by Minute podcast.
Absolutely, and it's a lovely stage when you have people, sending you like little notes and all the rest. And I have often thought like I'd love to revisit a Movies by Minute show like 10 years later, with all the stuff that you learn after you've done it, all those little like tidbits and and kind of.
I will admit, I have contemplated doing that with an American Werewolf in London, but I'm like, no, I can't. But then if I break it down to like, well, let's do every 5 minutes or something like that. So it's like definitely an abbreviated version.
Oh, well, I've been converting 2 minutes about time into. I have no idea when it's going to drop because I've been battling YouTube copyright system, but I've been converting it into like a video essay. So
Gotcha.
I've like all the main points from the show kind of going from start to finish of the film, but it's only like an hour and a half long rather than all the episodes of a show, but
Yeah.
with like snippets of the interviews we got. So talk about production design. Here's an extract from talking to the production designer, and stuff like that. And then I got a bit carried away and commissioned a load of musicians to do covers of the soundtrack, and I've got like loads of new music all the way through. And I was really excited to drop it. And then because of a couple of 5-second clips from the film, I'm now like battling
that's the
universal
worst.
copyright. And I kept cutting and changing them every time YouTube went out. And then I spoke to a Doctor Who YouTube creator, a friend of mine, who was like, you know what, just like appeal and wait 30 days and it'll be fine. So yeah, I'm in the waiting. I got like 10 days left. But yeah, it's if it's out at the time of this coming out, it's called Why About Time is the Greatest Film Ever Made and You Are Wrong and Stupid. Is
I'll post if it is, I will post a link in the show notes for this particular episode as well when that comes out. So once again, Luke, thank you for joining me. Thank you, audience, for coming along. It's always nice to see the numbers slowly but surely rising every single week. An extra person jumps on this train, and I got nothing else to say unless I just leave it with see you next Wednesday. You've just been listening to a Planet Geek production of Do You Want to Party? A Movies by Minute podcast of the 1985 The Return of the Living Dead. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, or Letterboxd. Search for Planet Geek Productions. X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. Or send us an email to planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Our closing music is provided by Night Chill. See the show notes for more details. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and farewell, fiends. What is your connection to Return of the Jedi? Return of the Jedi. Wow, already having to do a bunch of editing at the get-go. What is your? Because I was going to give the abbreviated, just the letters and all that sort of thing, and I almost said the Return of the Jedi letters, and then I just ended up saying Return of the Jedi out loud.